as demand remains robust, but the cosmetics company's CEO cautioned that consumers are getting choosy. So Ulta Beauty this morning up 7.3%. Speaking of beauty, Victoria's Secret also beat earnings and raised its outlook as its turnaround strategy seems to be luring more shoppers across all income levels. This is a huge story of once giant in the lingerie world that has come crashing down with competition from startups like Skims, today up almost 16%. And cybersecurity firm Rubrik is jumping after posting a surprise profit in the third quarter. Rubrik up right now more than 20%, increasing its market cap by a fifth. Coming up, a Bloomberg exclusive, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries joins us right here on Bloomberg Television to discuss the battle over healthcare subsidies and whether New Yorkers could see higher taxes again next year. This is Bloomberg.
This is one of my favorite little games.
We're coming to you live from Kuala Lumpur, the whole world. It's the APEC Leaders Summit, bringing together heads of states of 21 APEC economies.
The White House is trying to use the stops to gain additional leverage.
This big deal with a number of the biggest companies in South Korea.
That's a big number.
Deals can't be done.
Trust Bloomberg for on-the-ground coverage.
Korea is not Japan.
Up-to-the-minute reporting.
In this latest salvo of this trade war,
And the analysis you need.
China's not going anywhere, nor are we.
Have you ever thought about, or would you make a movie for a streaming service? Would you make a Netflix movie?
That's a great question.
I'm waiting for one where I ask and you go, that was a
Yeah. I mean, you're good at your job, bro. Like, it's just actually the first time anybody's ever asked me that. I'm not here to say what I would and wouldn't do in the future. But the theatrical experience is one that means a great deal to me. It means a great deal to us.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a certain responsibility. Like if Fruitville had happened a calendar year later, it probably would have come out on streaming. I've been fortunate enough that everything that I've written and directed has been a theatrical release. So I feel a duty to try to protect that. But that's where I'm at today.
bringing you up to them in the news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Sherianne in Seoul, and this is Bloomberg.
Why do the biggest names in business choose Bloomberg Television?
That's a great question.
It's a very good question.
Good question. Great question. I so appreciate that question. You certainly ask interesting questions.
Bloomberg Television. Top experts, great questions.
All right, let's head now over to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., where Bloomberg's Balance of Power co-host Joe Matthew has an exclusive interview with the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and they'll be talking about health care.
Indeed, thanks for joining us live from Capitol Hill on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Joe Matthew with an exclusive conversation with the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries of New York. Leader Jeffries, thanks for being back with us on Bloomberg. It's good to see you.
Morning, Joe.
So, pretty important ruling in the Supreme Court when it comes to redistricting in the state of Texas that I'd like to start with here. It's open season, apparently, on redistricting. Does that mean every Democratic-led state in the country needs to redraw their maps?
Well, first of all, it's unfortunate that the Supreme Court has rubber stamped a racially gerrymandered extreme map that Donald Trump ordered Texas Republicans to engineer as part of his effort to try to rig the midterm elections in 2026. But notwithstanding this adverse ruling, we're going to continue to move forward and ensure that there is a fair map across the country California voters enacted Prop 50, and as a result, we'll have a fair map in California with some additional opportunities to be competitive. And I expect that you'll see other states across the country continue to respond.
Will yours be one of them? Are you on the phone with Governor Hochul today saying it's time to redraw the New York map?
Well, the New York map has some particularities relative to the Constitution that won't necessarily allow it to be revisited in this particular cycle. But some voters have filed a lawsuit in New York, and we're monitoring that litigation closely to see what the outcome may be.
Okay. There's a question about whether you really need it. Leader Jeffries, after this.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell. Thank you for joining. We are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube today, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please help support the work that I do by making sure you subscribe to all the channels. I have channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can follow me on X, GETTR, Substack, Patreon. Please help support the work that I do. All these videos that I publish are for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall, but the individuals that are paid members to Substack, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and donating on my website through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee help support the work that I do. I also have great products. I have ebooks, supplements, and course material on immunology and pulmonology. Take a look at the great products that I offer. If you follow my advice, you will slow down the aging process and improve your immune system. Super important, especially after the crisis that we went through in 2020. Thank you for joining. We're going to be talking about the markets today. The markets haven't opened up yet. The futures for the S&P 500 is at 6,870. I still have a target for the S&P 500 at 6,850 to 6,900. So we'll pay attention to that. We're getting close to that upper bound of the target, but we'll look into Q1's price structure once the year ends. But right now, we're pretty close to probably where the equity market will end up. I'd be surprised if we're above 7,000 this year. I think if things start cooling down and the equity market stayed around 6,900 by year end, I think that's a good sign as we move into next year. If it started to go way up, I'd be a little bit more concerned. I have some concern about Q1 and Q2 of next year in terms of the S&P 500. But we have to take a look at the price structure. We still have this months of trading, and it's important to just be patient, all right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the cleanse or the Max 35. Take it every day. Take a teaspoon a day. Swish it in your mouth. Gargle about 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and then swallow. When you do that every day, you're improving your immune system by improving the health of your oral cavity, the health of your oral pharynx. You're maintaining your mucosal barrier, and you're helping the health of your epithelial cells in your oral pharynx. Super important to boost up that immune system. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Once everything's all clear, then go back to your maintenance dose. I've been taking Cleanse or Max 35 or Max 14 for over 5 years as a protocol for my anti-aging. So if you want to boost up your immune system, take the Max 35 or the Cleanse. I have them in stock. Also, we're in the holiday season. Go to my store and get some gifts for people. And as you move towards the end of the year and you want to start getting healthy as a New Year's resolution, it's a great way to start on the path of improving your health. Because when you improve your health, you'll actually have a better life. Please go to my store and get the structural nail silver soaps. They're very high quality. You can get it in peppermint or in lavender, charcoal tea tree, and lemongrass. Very high quality structural nano silver soaps. Get a few bars for your household. Very high quality, helps the health of your skin. And you're also helping to support the channel. All right, with that, make sure you use discount 5 so you save some money. It's all caps, discount 5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, with that, let's start taking a look at what's going on in the market. Now, I want to start playing some stuff about the DC pipe bomber. So let's take a look at some of those videos.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my...
The idea of diligence and good old-fashioned police work that you can, with a fresh pair of eyes, just start going through the case from day one and looking at things and saying, oh, wait a second, was this investigated? Well, let's look into this. There was some idea in the early going that the cell phone data that had been collected from those areas at those times had somehow been corrupted. Then apparently it wasn't corrupted. So maybe it's cell phone data that they got a hit from. You know, how many cell phones were operating in that area at that time, and can you trace that back? Maybe it was these so-called sneakers, these Nike Air Max Speed Turfs. I think they were a limited edition run from Nike. Maybe you figure out how many people in the greater Washington, D.C. area purchased those shoes, and then you start to narrow it down. I mean, it could be so many different things. But, you know, we don't want to listen to me say this because I've never investigated one crime ever in my life, but I know somebody who has. FBI investigator Bill Daley, along with Paul Morrow. And Bill, why don't we start with you? Because this would seem to be the epitome of fine police work, is that you don't have anything new. You just go back and you look what, for all intents and purposes, was literally a cold case, and you develop new leads, new ideas from it.
You're exactly right, John, and good to be with you again. And I would probably say it's a great day to show that the tenacity of the men and women of the FBI has paid off. And certainly, I think it's more so under the leadership and the kind of renewal of the FBI under Director Cottrell and Deputy Director Bongino. They were trying to reinstill kind of the confidence in the American people in the FBI. And I think what they did is when they came in, there are a number of cases still open out there. This was one of those key cases they want to focus on. But your point, John, is that there's a number of data points which we won't know until they start to reveal the evidence, which probably may not fully come out until we have trial, obviously because we don't want to taint any of the proceedings beforehand. But I'd probably tell you is that myself, having early in my career worked on several bombings, unfortunately, they were ones that went off and had to pull together some of the information working in a special photographic unit. We were able to kind of pull out certain elements that you know to trace back, whether it's wiring, whether it's explosive material, and such. In this case, in addition to all the data you just mentioned about sneakers and about perhaps video surveillance, maybe traffic cams or whatever, they also did have the actual live devices. So looking at those, they may not have been able to use DNA. Who knows if they have something to compare to, much like fingerprints. You need to have a known to compare to before you can find something. But it may have been a combination of several things, both tracking down where that material was purchased, how it was purchased, and who's moving in and out of that arena where that event took, where these bombs were placed at the time. So it goes to show you is that even a cold case can be revived.
And Paul, you joined us before the news conference. What was your takeaway from what you heard?
So they did allude a number of times to a tip, but it doesn't sound like a new tip. So what I'm getting after hearing that, and again, I'm just trying to read the tea leaves here, but it sounds like they may have had an old tip that had either been washed out or they hadn't quite gotten to, and they took the fresh look. Somebody said, well, what about this guy? We never really went all the way down the rabbit hole on this guy, and they started doing it. They started putting together some of those data points. One thing I would also add is if they had any DNA, and you often get even infinitesimal DNA these days, it doesn't have to be a direct hit, just like Bill said, even if somebody is not in the database, because of the familial DNA capacity that's developed. You can go to a second cousin twice removed if they're in the database, and then you have to chase that down, start washing out all the relatives that don't fit. AI now can do that very quickly, and the Bureau was very ahead on this kind of stuff, this technical stuff. They do very well. And so when you got to go through 3 million lines of data, that's going to be phone stuff and probably some cyber stuff. You got to synchronize all this stuff. They have capacity to do it. But undeniably, they took a fresh look at this thing, and assuming we get to a conviction, and there's a long way to go, but this is a big win for them. They came at this thing with fresh eyes. They got it done. Congratulations are definitely in order.
Intriguing that you mentioned AI there, because our good friend Steve Ducey just texted me and said, I wonder if AI had an application in this. And Bill Daley, maybe you could answer that question. To Paul Morrow's point, to Steve Ducey's query, would they have run that data through AI to look for either some sort of comparative similarity or anomaly?
Yeah, and DrPaul's point exactly is that AI. If you look at where we were 5 years ago when the incident took place in January of 2021, some of the tools that we use today weren't available. AI was really just kind of burgeoning, really wasn't kind of tuned enough to be able to use. It's still in development, but can be applied in many different ways. And you're talking about really thousands of hours of video to be able to scan.
This is the beginnings of a uber control of society. Using AI, surveillance technology is part of what I've been talking about for the last 5 years about the BioPatriot Act. And an element of the BioPatriot Act is surveillance of the society. This leads into the social scoring. This leads to big brother and little sister. This leads to the government being able to shut you down with commerce if they don't like what you're saying or doing. This is dangerous. And it so happens that they're doing it at the end of the year. Well, wait a minute here. Is it that this is going to set in motion talk in 2026 for more surveillance technologies to be used by the surveillance state, FBI, CIA, NSA, even municipalities, local municipalities? And your tax-paying dollars are paying for this, for them to have more surveillance control over you. I think that's the problem.
That digitally, as opposed to someone sitting there kind of rewinding it, looking at it, analyzing it, that plus all the other data points, bringing them together and coming up with some commonality. As was suggested, this is probably a lead that may have been sitting there. We've seen it before in some other cold cases where people go in with a fresh set of eyes, a new technology, and they look at it and say, hey, let's run this one down. Let's go a little bit further into this rabbit hole because it could pay off. And we wouldn't know exactly what, but I certainly am glad they did take a fresh look. I think there are a few other cases the FBI is looking at that unfortunately have kind of sat on the shelf, and under the leadership of both the director, the deputy director, and certainly under the tutelage and the forethought of the president to kind of make America safe again, these cases will be looked at more closely.
Okay, thanks to both of you for being here.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR.
Let's listen to live. We're going to listen to live now about this particular. Oh, you know what? No, I want to go back to the new revelation from Admiral who oversaw alleged drug boat strikes by CNN. But before we do that, get this stack. This is really important for your health. The heirloom barley, the complete multivitamin, and the probiotic. The heirloom barley, what this will do is bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. It's a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even just with milk. But take it every day. And when you do this on a regular basis, by bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system. Also, you're helping with your cardiovascular system because when you bring down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. At the brain level, at the brain function level, bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body regularly will improve your neural connections. So please take the heirloom barley. Now, a great stack with it is the complete multivitamin and the probiotic. All right. The complete multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity, so your cells perform properly. And when your cells perform properly, your tissues perform properly. This is easy to digest. Take it every day. And take it with the probiotic. This is a powder. I also have a VeggieCap version. By taking a good probiotic, you're improving your gut biome. You're allowing your nutrients to be absorbed properly. You're improving your metabolism. You're improving your skin health. And your gut also helps with brain function. By having a good gut biome, you will sleep better. You will be able to consolidate memory. You'll be detoxifying your central nervous system. when you sleep better, and you'll be well rested. So please go to my store and get the probiotics, either the veggie cap version or the powdered version. And like I said, get the probiotic, the multivitamin, and the heirloom barley. That's a great stack to get healthy. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get a discount of $5, all caps, discount 5. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
CNN has learned that Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley, who oversaw the operation, told lawmakers today on the Hill that the 2 survivors did not, as some defense officials have been claiming for months behind the scenes, radio for backup before a second strike killed them. That's according to 2 sources with direct knowledge of today's closed-door briefing, during which a select group of senators and Congress members were shown classified video of the strikes. Democratic Congressman Jim Himes, who saw the footage, called it, quote, one of the most troubling things I've seen. A short time later, he elaborated on that with CNN Chief Captain.
The video was enormously disturbing. And I can't describe it in detail, but to tell you that the initial strike, as you might imagine, when a piece of munitions falls on a small boat, did an immense amount of damage, caused a huge amount of fire, and ultimately the end result was 2 individuals without any weaponry, without any tools of any kind, clinging to a wrecked boat, really what looked like flotsam. You know, and we observed them for a long time, and the commanders involved said that they believed that there might be some chance they would be rescued, that there might be some chance that the cocaine on board could be recovered. But these 2 individuals, to anyone looking at this thing, would say are moments.
If it could be rescued or recovered, all right, let's say that this shipment could be recovered. That means that they didn't knock the boat out completely. So what? Blow up the boat. So what? This guy is literally supporting this congressman is literally, where is he from? Well, it doesn't say, he's a Democrat, but it doesn't say what state. But the thing is Jim Himes, Democrat, is supporting drug runners? Oh, orange man bad. There's nothing good that ever can come out of the Trump administration. That's what this guy's saying. What's wrong with destroying the drug runners? If they were clinging to their boat, they climb back in the boat, and they can recover the cargo, blow it up again. So what? I don't think anything was wrong with how Admiral Bradley conducted the operation. Now, I didn't see the video. No one has, other than him. But you know, the thing is, well, in the committee and the ones that are in the Pentagon. But the thing is that I'm probably willing to bet that if you watch the video, if someone sees the video, and maybe it'll come out, most people would say, you know what? Killing them is the right thing.
From slipping under the waves, the decision was taken to kill them, and that is in fact what happened. And that was pretty hard to watch, I must say.
Well, not everyone who saw the video shares that view. Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton, for one.
The first strike, the second strike, and the third and the fourth strike on September 2nd were entirely lawful and needful, and they were exactly what we'd expect our military commanders to do. I saw 2 survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down the United States, back over, so they could stay in the fight. I didn't see anything disturbing about it. What's disturbing to me is that knowing that Americans have died from drugs being run to America by these cartels.
Well, again, Admiral Bradley said that, at least when it came to radioing for help or backup, the survivors did not do that. And according to our sources, said they did not appear to have radio or other communications devices. Now, you'll remember defense officials have been quietly pushing back on criticism that this was a war crime by arguing in part that they were legitimate targets because they appeared to be radioing for help or backup. Now, today, Admiral Bradley said the 2 survivors were in no position to make a distress call. Now, if true, it marks yet another shift.
So there was a lot of people making up stuff in the news. That's what this is saying. That's what Anderson Cooper, Mr. CIA, is saying. They made up stuff in the news to try to demonize Trump's administration and Pete Hegseth.
A story that has changed considerably since it first broke in the Washington Post earlier this week.
If there were a second strike that killed women, people in the first strike, were you taking on
I don't know that happened. And Pete said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted that. Not the second strike. The first strike was very legal. It was fine, and if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make
I have great confidence.
you think no second strike?
I don't know. I'm going to find out about it, but Pete said he did not order the death of those two men.
And quoting from the initial Washington Post story, quote, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a spoken directive, according to two people with direct knowledge of the operation. The order was to kill everybody, one of them said, which Secretary Hegseth denies, in which the president, as you heard there, said neither he nor Hegseth knew anything about. The next day, the story changed so much, with the White House, along with Secretary Hegseth, putting the focus squarely on Admiral Bradley.
On September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
To clarify, Admiral Bradley was the one who gave that order for a second.
And he was well within his authority to do so.
Now, that same admiral seemed...
Oh, hey, Ryan Reynolds here from Mobile. Growing up, all I wanted was a Teddy Ruxpin. But now, I'm older, I know the best gift is unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month.
Hello, Ryan.
Oh, Teddy! That's a Teddy.
Now, that same admiral seems to have given lawmakers and now us another window into what actually happened. I want to bring in Congressman Jake Auchincloss. Congressman, what is this new information that Admiral Bradley reportedly says that the survivors of the initial strike did not appear to have radio or other communications devices and were in no position to make a call, a distress call? Does it change the government's argument that the secondary strike was legal and justified? Does it, in your opinion, should it?
Anderson, good evening. Doesn't change my interpretation of the events. It makes them more horrific, but I've long stated these are illegal. I commanded a joint training mission to Central America to do drug interdiction operations. I worked with Panamanians, I worked with Colombians, I commanded reconnaissance, Marines, and naval officers. I know what drug interdiction looks like. It's riverine training, it's jungle training. It is not killing shipwrecked sailors. This is not an operation that falls under the law of armed conflict. This is an operation that falls under law enforcement maneuvers, and neither the first nor the second strike, in my interpretation, are legal, and they are not going to keep Americans safe from drug inflow.
I talked to Senator Tammy Duckworth.
So he's basically saying the President of the United States can't knock out drug runners going to the United States. You gotta wait until they come to the land of the free and the home of the brave, and then you can do something. This is the reason why we have problems. We have 80,000 people dying a year. Maybe it's 50,000, depends on the numbers that you look at, but it's a high number per year. We gotta stop this. We gotta stop the supply, and we have to stop the demand. This is how you stop the supply. And anyone that is supporting the drug runners are part of the problem. Now, he's a Democrat. Oh, he used to be a Marine. He knows what it's like. But orange man bad all the time, according to this Marine. Who is he on this Marine? What side is he on? Is he on the American side or is he on the drug runner side? No. The way to handle this is kill the enemy. Kill the enemy. What's wrong with what Caesar did when he went into Gaul and literally chopped people's heads off and put them on stakes? What's wrong with that if that's the enemy? You know? down? This is the wussification of the military right here. And it so happens that he's a Democrat.
A short time ago, one of the things she was saying is that, look, this is not, in her opinion, this is not about necessarily these two men and narco traffickers, but what if in the future, if the U.S. is doing this, an American pilot is shot down?
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. CNN, which is nothing but a state-run media network, Anderson Cooper, who's got some morality issues with his sexuality, and then you got a Marine here that's for the drug runners and not for the American citizens. And oh, by the way, the CIA uses drug running for their black ops to finance their operations. So what's really going on here?
And able to radio for help, would some force kill him and say, well, look, the U.S. is doing this, we can do this too? Would it change somehow the rules of war if this is not illegal?
I certainly agree with the senator that the United States respecting international standards and humanity is critical, both for who we are as a country, but also for how we want our citizens to be treated. I would also agree with her that as horrific as these details about these two shipwrecked sailors are, it's not actually the central point. The central point here in these operations in Central America is that this is blood for oil version 2.0. Just like 20 years ago in Iraq, when another Republican president got this country into military adventurism in pursuit of oil, Donald Trump is trying to get the United States involved in military operations in Venezuela because they have the world's largest...
Wait a minute, Marine. Russia and China are trying to be in our hemisphere. We're going to have a war with China. I'm sure you know that, Marine. Don't you think that we should have a better foothold in South America? Don't you think that we should be able to control the minerals and the oil that will help us as a country? Marine, what's wrong with making sure that we are positioning ourselves around Panama to make sure that freedom of navigation is open when we need to move our materiel and our Navy from the Atlantic to the Pacific to defend Taiwan? What is wrong with America being an empire? Oh, we got another woke Marine here. That's what's happening here. Or a person that you demonize. This is how politics works. You demonize your opponent, the other party. In this case, he's demonizing the Republican Party. So maybe he doesn't run for a Senate position so he can fleece America for 6 years instead of just 2, because he's a representative in Congress. Or maybe if he gets enough notoriety, he could run for president. The same bullshit that Senator Kelly's doing. See? Marine. Well,
and Chevron has a joint operating agreement for those reserves, and the president is trying to hook up the U.S. oil majors.
So what?
According to a source with direct knowledge of the briefing, Admiral Bradley ordered the...
It's been like that for 100 years. Big deal. You want your standard of life and your way of life to decline? Well, why don't we just pack it up and just move everything back to the United States, Marine? Let's forget about the hegemonic power that we gained in World War II. Marine?
To destroy the remains of the vessel, killing the survivors on the grounds. It appeared that part of the vessel remained afloat because it still contained cocaine. Does that rationale make sense to you?
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy.
they're allowed to under the law of armed conflict, and again, the law of armed conflict does not apply here because this is not an armed conflict. And I know that because I'm a member of Congress. I never voted to go to war with Venezuela, and that's what would make LOAC apply here. But even supposing that LOAC was applying to this situation, you're only allowed to strike a disabled vessel if there's reason to believe that that vessel could be brought back into armed combat against another U.S. vessel. That is so clearly what was not the case here that it just makes that rationale ludicrous. But again, that rationale is 2 and 3 orders removed.
If the weapon of destruction is the drugs, and their target is the mainland of the United States of America, what is wrong with destroying the boat? Triple tap, quadruple tap, 10 tap. No, what this is Orange Man bad and Democrats good, brought to you by a Democrat representative that forgot his loyalty to his country. What is this guy? He thinks that it's okay to have these drug runners to come in. That policy failed. Failed under Obama, failed under Biden, failed under Bush, and Clinton, and Bush, and Reagan, and blah, 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 blah. It's time to kill them. But Marine wants to, cause some sort of litigious issue. This guy's a dipshit.
From the actual central point, which is that we shouldn't be engaged with in military operations against Venezuela in the first place.
What?
Americans do not want a blood for oil campaign.
What? See, this is the problem right there. They don't view this as an existential threat. Now, maybe Jarhead lost his marbles when he was in the Marine Corps. All you got to do is open up a book. Take a look at what did the Western powers do to weaken China? The Opium Wars. What's China doing to weaken the United States? They're doing the same damn thing. It's time to view this as a war. Jarhead.
Not have the authority to wage it, and he certainly doesn't have the justification to wage it as inhumanely as he is.
As we mentioned, President Trump just yesterday said he supports releasing the video of the second strike. Do you actually expect that to happen? Because obviously the administration has been very eager to share, some videos of other strikes.
I don't know, but I will make this prediction, Anderson, which is that Secretary Hegseth is going to try to find a military officer to make the fall guy in this. He's going to try to lay the blame on a service member. He won't try to take the blame himself.
It's interesting you said that because in one of his public statements of early on about Admiral Bradley was, that everybody should know I have his back, I have the military's back, but it was Bradley who made the order, which is kind of, it's safe.
Bradley had made the order, and not only that, he didn't do anything wrong. But we got Jarhead here that wants to support the drug runners. It's not that really he wants to support the drug runners. He just wants to be anti-Trump, anti-Hegseth, anti-military, because his party sucks.
Somebody's back, and yet it's also pointing out that they have a target on their back.
He will find someone with stars on their shoulder to take the blame because Secretary Hegseth ultimately does not have the integrity to own this decision.
Congressman Jay Cottrell, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Joining me now is former Congressman and military veteran Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, what do you make of all that we have learned today and this idea, this legislative exclusive CNN reporting, that part of the testimony today was that there was not a radio?
All right, so let's think about this.
They were not radio.
They asked a question with Cotton, Tim Cotton, think it's Tim, Republican, saying nothing was wrong. The admiral did everything right. Then they have the jarhead Marine that talks the most, saying that Trump's bad and Hegseth's bad, and that there shouldn't be a war against Venezuela because, you know, America should be the land of the free and, you know, for drug running. All right, let's find out what this guy says and see how biased CNN is.
For help or radioing for something.
Yeah, Anderson, this collapse is like, I was seeing yesterday or the day before, they were trying to make the case again that they were calling for help and trying to gather the drugs back up. That was actually the argument. And the other thing I would say, by the way, is even if they were calling for help, you would think the military would want to stay and observe who comes, right? And then maybe interdict that boat the way we used to interdict boats by shooting the engine out and sending another boat to interdict it. But this is really tough to see any case in which people hanging on to survive doesn't not just violate LOAC, it violates the maritime law. I mean, we used to, but you would read stories about pirates back in the day that would be rescued out of the sea because there's an understanding that the second, whether you're military or civilian, the second you're basically floating in distress, it is the requirement to pull them out of the water. And it doesn't matter, Anderson, if you're a bad person or a good person. It doesn't even matter if you're on drugs or whatever. At any point when you are distressed in the water, it becomes incumbent on whoever can to rescue that person. And this is the opposite of what happened.
All right, so CNN decided to close their clip with 2 people against Trump, 1 person for Trump's administration. Why did they do that? Oh, it's a sandwich effect. Trump's bad. Then Trump's okay with cotton. And then Trump's bad again. And so when you leave the clip, you come to the conclusion that, oh, Trump's bad. And they are fair and balanced. Well, that's not even the network's phrase. This is CNN. I mean, this is CIA. No, killing the drug runners, the narco terrorists, there's nothing wrong with that. 10 tap them. I don't care. How many people were saved by killing these individuals? Thousands. Thousands. More people will die from that drug run if it was successful into the United States. More people would have died from them than the number of people that died on 9/11. Keep that in mind. And that's happening all the time. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. Super important to take every day, but especially during the winter season. You need to boost up that immune system. And vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium will help with your skin, your brain function, and your immune system. Stack them together to get the max benefit. Also, magnesium increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. Omega-3 helps with your cardiovascular health. It'll help to bring down inflammation and help you to control your lipid profile and to control clotting. Myotrol will help you to build muscle. When you get older, you can't build muscle as well. Why? Because you've methylated your genes, because you're aging. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with that gene expression. When you do resistance training, take the Myotrol, they'll help you to build muscle. And that way you're reducing atrophy. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from this. You will notice that your body will recover quicker after your workout and you will get strength gains. This stacks well with Gladiator Barley. Now, Gladiator Barley will help to build muscle, bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals, and you'll recover quicker after your workout. This is a great way to stay healthy. do some resistance training, do some cardio, do some balancing and stretching exercises. Your ratio between cardio and resistance training should be about 65-35 split, 65 heavy on the resistance training, 35 on the cardio. Take the Gladiator Barley every day. This is a month's supply. Very powerful, and you get other benefits. You're detoxifying your body and bringing down inflammation. You're going to recover quicker. You're going to help with your immune system and your endocrine system, even your vascular system, because by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you're reducing plaque formation. This is going to help with your brain. How? By bringing down inflammation at the neuron level, you're maintaining the myelin sheath of your neuron. So you're helping those neural connections. Very important to take the Gladiator Barley. So a great stack: Gladiator Barley, the Myotrol to help with the muscle building, the vitamin C and magnesium to help with your immune system, omega-3 helps with your cardiovascular system, and magnesium and zinc that helps with your immune system and brain function. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's now take a look at this pipe bomb suspect that's in custody.
And to further break down the latest on the pipe bomb suspect, let's bring in FBI Director Kash Patel. Director Patel, great to have you back on the show. It's amazing, a big day for the FBI. I'm just wondering, this evidence has been in the hands of the FBI since 2021, the better part of 5 years. What jumped out to make you put all hands on deck?
Trace, it's so good to be back with you on the show. Look, this FBI is doing one thing and one thing only: letting good cops be cops, letting our professionals and investigators and staff in the field go out into the field and conduct investigations. That's what Donald Trump was elected to do, and he's given us the resources and authority we need. As to this specific case, the pipe bomber, you're right. The prior administration sat on the evidence for 4 years. There wasn't any production of new evidence from 5 years ago. Here's what we did. We went out to the country, brought in our experts, and Deputy Director Bongino led the charge and said, we're going to look at every single piece of evidence again. Trace, we looked at 3 million lines of evidence. We went back and looked at the cell phone tower data dumps. We went back and looked at the providers and what information they provided pursuant to search warrants at the time, and asked questions such as, why weren't all the phone numbers scrubbed and why weren't they connected, and why wasn't there any geolocational data done? Now, that is either sheer incompetence or complete intentional negligence, and neither of which is acceptable for this FBI. So we changed that in the prior 8 months, not on just this case, but every one. And what that did was allow us to narrow the search down. I mean, I have to remind the audience and the world, this guy, this suspect, planted bombs at the United States Capitol on camera, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the prior 4 years couldn't find him. Completely unacceptable. And that's why we went back to good cop basics and made sure that our police investigators just routed out excellent work at the Federal Bureau of Investigation and across the interagency.
I think you make a fantastic point because you talk about 600 tips, 1,000 interviews, cell phone evidence, receipts for the bomb-making materials. But was there one thing, Director Patel, that you looked at and said, okay, this is key? Was it the rare tennis shoes? Was it the cell phone evidence that you had? Was there something that you thought, we can solve this if we can just expound on this one thing?
So I can comment a little bit on all this. Yes, of course, we looked at the sneakers that the suspect was wearing because, as the world now knows, there was only a limited amount of those ever made and sold in the United States. So again, we take the circle and go from thousands of people and we shrink it down, not just based on the sneakers alone, but the cell phone geolocational data. Of course, the FBI, have the best cell phone capability.
Why would you wear unique sneakers if you're going to be doing something nefarious? Don't you want to blend in? No, you got to go fashionable.
Tracking systems, and we use that to say who was around the area that matches the description, the height, the weight, the size, and who was wearing this sort of sneakers. But on top of that, I can generally say that, some of our biggest breakthroughs always come from cell phone analysis. But what you have to do, Trace, before you can run cell phone analysis is find the number of the individual you're looking for. And of course, this FBI was able to pull data out of the millions of lines of information in cell phone dumps to triangulate not just who it was and the location, but we were able to use our tools and build evidence that's usable in a court of law. That's the most important part about this. Accountability, we can arrest anyone we want, but we worked with our partners at the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, and the U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro to leverage countless subpoenas and legal processes before we ever decided to hit the house like we did this morning and to hit the suspect's place of business.
You've been the FBI director for maybe 9-10 months now. It's interesting to me, did you have trouble? Were there struggles with some of the FBI agents who may have been loyal to Christopher Wray?
What we have found here is that any leadership that weaponized the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the prior administration or before that, we removed. Once we put our leaders in the field, like our new ADIC in Washington, D.C., and the deputy director and all other leadership across our 7th floor here, we told them the mission is simply as follows: crush violent crime and defend the homeland. That's what we do, and hold people accountable. And once that message and our leadership got out into the field, and here's another important part, we put 1,000 agents across America, removed them from headquarters, took intel analysts and support staff and pushed them out across the country to say the crime fighting has to happen out in the streets and in the cities of America and not inside the Hoover building and the headquarters building that built this diseased temple of weaponization. And that, coupled together with the president's authorities and resources to direct against priority targets, allowed us to put the manpower on this target set. And it wasn't easy, Trace. I'm not going to say it was easy, right? But they had 4 years and we did it in 8.
All right. Consumer sentiment rises slightly for the University of Michigan data. Personal spending was 0.3% month over month. Estimate was 0.3%. So personal spending is in line with estimates. Core PCE price index rises 2.8 year over year. Estimate was 2.8. So everything is within estimates. So that's good for stocks, because if you've controlled the PCE, then the Federal Reserve, most likely with the declining jobs, most likely will lower rates in February. So we should see equities go up today. Now, right now, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,887. We may get to 6,900 today, based on the data that just came out by University of Michigan. Real personal spending unchanged month over month for September. Estimate was 0.1. Core PCE prices, ex housing, rises 0.2 month over month. All right, let's continue with Cash Patel.
I'm curious because the suspect, Brian Cole Jr., 30 years old, lives with his mom in Northern Virginia. Very little information about this suspect. He's got a very small social media footprint. What do you make of this? Do you have more information that we will learn about him in the coming days and weeks, Cash?
Trace, you're going to learn a lot more about him coming up in the next 24 hours, because what's going to happen is he's going to make his first court appearance. He's going to have to be arraigned, and he's going to have to be subjected to the formal charging process. And once that happens, we'll be able to speak more clearly to the public about what we found. But what I'll remind the audience is this suspect was just 25 years old at the time of the alleged pipe bomb incident, not an old person at all, not someone with extensive history necessarily in the criminal justice system. But I think what we'll find in the coming days, maybe even just by tomorrow, is the amount of resources that you have to put into this. Generally speaking, and not stylizing the evidence in this case, you got to go out and buy pipes. You got to go out and buy end caps. You got to go out and buy sulfur. You got to go out and buy wires. Then you got to figure out how to put that all together successfully. And remember, thankfully, these devices didn't go off, but they could have gone off. They were ready to go off. And so that was a disaster that was averted, thankfully, saving the lives of, hundreds of people around the United States Capitol. And so that's what we were able to hone in on as investigators and FBI agents in the field, let out on that and said, let's go figure out who's buying this stuff and how they're using it and how they're learning how to do it. And I think you're going to get a lot more information as to the how, the why, the when, and the where, and the planning in the coming days.
As late as 2 weeks ago, Director Patel, there were, people online saying that Christopher Wray sat on this evidence and Kash Patel is doing the same thing. It's got to be reinforcing for you and your department to know that you were able to, to actually solve this thing in a fair amount of time.
It just shows me that the leadership changes that we've made at the FBI with the deputy and myself here, and the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche at DOJ has really made a difference. And I go back to the fact that they spent maybe a decade or more weaponizing law enforcement. They spent months and years on things like Russiagate and Arctic Frost, which this FBI fully exposed and intends to hold people accountable. We did the same thing for every single case that we are working in this FBI by the thousands. We said we are focused on fighting crime, not on building weaponization. And once that message got out there, once our leaders got out into the field, these investigators at this FBI have never been more motivated. I go across the country and they say, thank you for letting us return to our bread and butter priorities of crushing violent crime and defending the homeland and letting us be good cops, because that's what they know how to do. But leadership handcuffed them, and that was an intentional decision by the prior administration. And yes, of course, it takes more than a few months to build a case like this. We are searching for an individual who planted bombs at the United States Capitol. That is not an easy target set to take down when there's no eyewitnesses. Remember that.
Yep.
So we built it from ground zero, and we redid it in 8 months, as you said. So that's a testament to how this FBI works, because look, it's not just this case. We've arrested 25,000 violent felons this year. That's twice as many as last year alone already.
And lastly, Director Patel, Janine Pirro says that this was literally a needle in a haystack. But even if you know the needle is in that haystack, you've got to find it. What is it that you can kind of point us towards something that you knew that would get you to that needle?
Well, generally speaking, in these types of cases, when you have surveillance and technical capabilities, you want to bring in those capabilities and exhaust them against the resource debt. And what we did was exhaust them against the cell phone debt. And even when we found that needle, which it was a needle, and we know the moment when we found it, what you have to do then is, even though you know that you have the individual you think is the suspect in this case, you have to execute search warrants. You have to go out to the telecom providers, the social media accounts, the internet providers. You have to go and surveil the individual and individuals around him and build a case that can withstand scrutiny in a court of law, because that's our bar. And that's what we did with our partners at the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office. We're not just going to use a needle in a haystack to convict someone. We're going to use a mountain of evidence, because the ultimate accountability for the American people is not just the transparency initiatives we're leading at the FBI, which is greater than ever before, but by going into a court of law and saying, here it is.
FBI Director Kash Patel, congratulations, Director. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
Discovery shares are halt. We've got some news. Go to
Warner Brothers, the shares are halted. Warner Brothers Discovery shares are halted. So I don't know. It could.
I think you're here. It's out. I think we've been waiting for it.
Press release is out.
Press release is out, and let's explain to the public what's happening here.
Not the biggest secret in the world is Netflix.
Netflix is the winner.
Is the winner, and the deal's done apparently at this point. And the details will be forthcoming, and we'll see whether regulatory muster becomes a problem. I know that at least Warner Brothers is halted at this point. I figure Netflix probably is at this point. Or let's see, following, it will be after, obviously, the separation of some of the cable.
You have two deals going on here. So you have
that would happen.
Netflix is going to be buying this streaming business.
$27.75 a share. It says cash and stock for
$27.75,
And most importantly, on the regulatory side of this deal, if you're looking, the breakup fee is $5.8 billion. More than, so, you know, people have been discussing how regulators would think about this transaction, but
Equity value $72 billion, and total enterprise value $82.7 billion at this point.
That's with the debt piece of it.
That's with the debt.
Right.
It is one of the most storied, Warner Brothers, one of the most storied studios and entities in Hollywood, obviously, and it culminates, I guess, with Zaslav able to deliver, I guess you would say, to shareholders at this point of Warner Brothers, a heck of a lot better than $12 or $11 a share.
Given where it had fallen to.
Given where it had fallen.
The big question on the regulatory side is going to be, you know, the argument effectively here is, if you look at the Paramount transaction, that would have effectively taken out the studio, right? In this case, you're not taking out the studio. That's a big part of the argument. The other argument that Netflix is effectively going to have to make, and Time Warner is going to have to make, or I should say Warner Brothers is going to have to make effectively, is to argue that it's not just looking at the marketplace in the context of streaming itself, but to look at it in the context of time spent online, eyeballs and the like. You're going to have to effectively include YouTube viewing and Amazon Prime and so many others, so that you're not just looking at the paid streaming business. What you're looking at there?
I'm looking at the cash component is $23.25, $4.50 in the shares of Netflix. That comes up to 27.75. There's collars on the shares. There's other. You know, this is going to be a complex.
It's going to be a complex deal. And by the way, this is going to be in the regulatory mix for a long time.
It could close in a year and a half. That's what I think they would hope. They would hope. Does Zaslav run Warner Brothers, the studio?
I'm trying to look through this to find out. What I also don't know is, and look, this is where the next piece of this comes. Does Paramount try to go hostile? Is there some other element of this that could happen? I don't know. What do you think regulators do? You know, Jason Kilar, who ran, I should say, Hulu for a very long time, came out last night. I don't know if you saw the quote. He said, "If I was tasked with doing this, I could not think of a more effective way to reduce competition in Hollywood than selling WBD to Netflix." So there's going to be a lot of consternation in Hollywood. By the way, there would have been consternation whether it was sold to Paramount or to Netflix, but clearly there's going to be lots of disagreement about, you know, who should be the owner effectively of this asset. But it does appear that Netflix is now going to be the owner, or at least going to attempt to be the owner, and that Warner Brothers Discovery's board has decided to take that bet and to take that bid.
Hey guys, it's probably worth it. Hey guys, it's probably worth taking a look at shares of Netflix just longer term on this, because it's a market cap of about $438 billion. You know, it's the media company that has been the darling of the street. It's off its 52-week high, which was $134.12. 103.22 is where it closed yesterday. But you're still talking about, if you look over the last 5 years or even the history of the stock, that was an all-time high when it was sitting at those levels. It has done very well, particularly relative to some of the other media companies. And I wonder what wrapping this in.
We should point out that they get $2 also approximately from the spinoff of the linear business. So if you want to actually add in it might actually
add that back in.
Come to $29 to $30 in terms of what.
Yeah, no, and this is what David had said. Yes, David Zaslav said from the beginning he wanted $30 a share, and this is effectively arguably a $30 a deal share.
Yeah.
If you believe that the spinoff ultimately captures the $2. Now, some of the arbitrageurs are going to start to do a time value of money on the Netflix portion of this transaction.
How long this gets locked up?
Can we see how nasty could it get? Because it got nasty already. The letter, where they actually, they didn't. I don't think they mentioned Zaslav by name, but they said that.
I want to go to Bloomberg's U.S. customer sentiment.
They still believe labor markets are going to weaken in the year ahead.
And they still expect inflation to persist, but just not as extreme as they were expecting a few months ago. And that is certainly welcome news, both for consumers themselves as well as policymakers.
All right, Joanne, thank you so much. We appreciate it. As always, Joanne Shu, Surveys of Consumers Director at the University of Michigan in beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan. We get some green on the screen here today, Nora, with the S&P.
Sent a letter just literally 24 hours ago to the board. They said that Netflix's dominance in streaming and Comcast, which is the parent company of this network, which had been bidding for it, as well as presence as a leading broadband and MVP player, present unique and serious antitrust concerns that guarantee a long and extensive review process and peril closing either deal. Paramount is the easier path, and its outcome is assured, they were arguing. And then we've discussed this idea that the Trump administration was, closer to or willing to do this. Let's get Faber on the phone because he's calling in right now. Hey, David?
Yeah, hey, Andrew.
Tell us what you know.
Well, you guys obviously have the terms, I guess, at this point. And listen, I mean, the price itself, you have to just step back for a second and consider. Because $27.75, $23.50 of it in cash, and then the rest in stock that's going to be collared is quite a number. And remember, it's for the studio and streaming business. So in addition, because they've reversed the split, there will be a remain co that will trade publicly called Global Networks, made up of all the linear cable networks of Warner Brothers Discovery. That will also have a value. Maybe it's $2.50, maybe it's as much as $4. Put it all together, and you do end up with a value of at least, let's call it, over $30 a share. And don't forget, guys, for a stock that was trading at about 11 or 12 bucks before all this started. So it's an enormous premium that Netflix is willing to pay here. Much of it, as we said yesterday, as I reported, 85% of it in cash. And if you were just talking, though, and it's come up numerous times in my reporting, of course, as well, is the question of antitrust and whether, in fact, this is going to be something that can get past the regulators and, of course, Donald Trump as well, given you are putting together the #1 and #4 streaming companies in the world. And that will continue to be a key question. There is a $5.8 billion reverse break fee, meaning that if Netflix is unable to get to the finish line, $5.8 billion will go to Warner Brothers Discovery. But many shareholders will argue that's not enough to compensate for what could be a very long process that could still end in them not owning the company. We just don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But a stunning outcome, Netflix clearly showing that it was very much determined to own this business. And again, guys, I'll defer to you as well with your thoughts. But Netflix pursuing this so aggressively, you wonder what of its shareholders will question whether, in fact, what it was seeing that made it want to go down this road, given its multiple to earnings, has been the envy of the media business for many years. Is it putting that multiple at risk?
So, David, a couple of things. As I was talking to folks around this transaction yesterday, we've heard and there's been reporting that Ted Sarandos had been down to see the president of the White House, that they felt, some assurance that they could actually move ahead with this deal. In part, by the way, my understanding is because CNN and the linear channels are not part of this, and that potentially that might allow, or this administration might look more favorably on this deal because it's not thinking about some of those linear businesses. I don't know if you think that's true, and whether you think that the real impetus for this is that actually so much of the library programming that Warner Brothers has lives or has been sold to Netflix, and they wouldn't have access to that in the future, and the idea that they could actually take down material costs, given that they would obviously now own HBO.
I think that's all true. I think your reporting on Sarandos and the president is important because, again, that goes to that key question. And as we know, the president ends up being a key decision maker in so many of these kinds of things. There had been a perception, of course, that Paramount had a much easier path, and I've said this many times. First of all, given they were paying a number for the entire company, and secondly, but not less important, that they had a very strong relationship with, Larry Ellison, with the president, and therefore would have an easier go on the antitrust front. When it comes to what Netflix gets here, you're absolutely right. The library is certainly one of the key things. They no longer measure this company in terms of subscriber growth, right? It's simply time spent, how much time is our audience with us. And with the ad business as well, an important component of their growth plan, that library is going to be key in franchises they're going to be able to bring over, and not to mention the HBO shows and things like Game of Thrones and everything else. I continue though, but you've got to remember, Andrew, if they're no longer buying that programming, so to speak, they're keeping it for themselves, it's sort of a wash. And there will be a question as to whether or not that's really going to contribute to any real growth for the company. There may have been a significant threat if Paramount in particular had bought the company, that they would no longer have access to certain programming that obviously is very important. And as you guys well know, they don't own a lot of their own IP, which is something David Zaslav will tell you so many times, and that's a key consideration one would have to think for them as well.
Why didn't Netflix just buy this instead of Discovery a couple of years ago, and basically getting everything done? Discovery.
I don't know. Why didn't Paramount buy it, Joe? Like when they, instead of, or David Ellison and Larry Ellison, why didn't they just step up and try and buy this thing when it was HBO?
And who's going to pick over
I think it speaks to the changes.
The assets.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, that's a good question. Look, one thing I think this does kind of speak to, though, is that constant fluctuation in what the market values. Do they value the enviable margins that David was pointing out that Netflix has before, or is it back to content is king, and there's only so many of these content places to go around? It's probably noteworthy that Paramount Skydance shares, at least until just a moment ago, were off by even more than Netflix. The idea that they might miss out on this asset, so they're down by 2 1/3%. That's not a concern about overpaying that's reflected there. That's a concern about there's only so many of these assets to go around, and you have to have that content, and you have to get bigger. So I think it's that constant battle that we've seen play out over the last several years in the market over what investors are going to value at any given point.
Becky, as well, you're right. And I wonder whether this will usher another round of consolidation, because to your point, Paramount was looking at the possibility of $6 billion in synergies from putting these businesses together. Those are huge, obviously, cost synergies, and giving it the scale at its streaming company, Paramount Plus, to really compete globally. And so, you have to wonder, they've done better than many had anticipated, at least the last quarter, in terms of where they came in on EBITDA versus, of course, the promise that was far above that some time back. But that said, the opportunity here or the miss is a significant one for Paramount. They competed very aggressively here. As you know, they started all this off. They made 5 bids. Remember, 3, of course, before the auction began, and then 2 more. I think they were contemplating, I have to find out from reporting, going as high as the high 20s, maybe even to $30 a share. Much of it financed with Larry Ellison's fortune. And yet, the choice here, apparently from Warner Brothers, was to go with Netflix, despite, again, what we will come back to numerous times, being that risk in terms of what the regulatory front will look like for the company.
Tired of this advertising. All right, let's listen into Hill about the pipe bomber.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. I'm Niall Stanage and we have a great show for you today. We have a slightly different show than normal because our friend Amber Duke, who's normally my co-host on a Friday, is ill. Nothing serious, she'll be back soon. But at the last moment, I'm glad to be joined by the Hill's Washington correspondent, DrPaulCottrell. Good to have you here.
Great to be here in a new studio.
Exactly.
Thanks you guys having me here.
Exactly. It's all gone luxury in Rising these days.
We've talked a lot on other shows, but so it'd be good to re-engage this conversation in a little bit longer form, and
absolutely
to be here.
For sure. Looking forward to it. So, coming up on Rising, Navy Admiral Frank Bradley is contradicting the Washington Post reporting on the first alleged drug boat strikes in the Caribbean. He says that Secretary Pete Hegseth never gave a, quote, kill everybody order.
Plus, actress Halle Berry had some harsh words for Governor Gavin Newsom, saying that he should not be our next president.
And Britain's Prince Harry appeared on Stephen Colbert's show, where he took a surprising swipe at President Trump. But first, federal agents arrested a suspect Thursday in connection to the January the 6th pipe bomb case. The man taken into custody is 30-year-old Brian Cole from Virginia.
He's accused of planting 2 pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters on the eve of the Capitol riots. Here's FBI Director Kash Patel on the arrest.
I'm proud to stand here before you and say, we solved it. He will have his day in court. The American public and the world will learn even more information through the legal process, as we have committed under this Attorney General. We are the most transparent law enforcement.
Before we continue with the Hill, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Good Night Formula. This will help you to get into 3 cycles to 5 cycles of REM sleep, allow you to detoxify your central nervous system, consolidate memory, and to be well rested. When you do that, you're slowing down the aging process of your brain. Resveratrol, I've been taking this for decades. It soaks up free radicals. It helps with the health of your mitochondria. Your energy levels will improve. This slows down the aging process. This gets rid of cells that are in senescence, and tissues that can regenerate will actually be younger. Now, resveratrol stacks well with C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. So please stack it with the ones that I just mentioned. Vitamin B complex helps with your energy levels, your cellular metabolism, and protects your neurons. Super important to take, especially if you're 40 years of age. You need to protect your neurons. And a great neurostack, clarity factor, gets rid of brain fog, allows you to concentrate on tasks. You take this regularly, every day, and over time, you're going to improve your neuroplasticity. You're going to be able to think faster and have better memory. Please take the clarity factor. This is a great neurostack. And vitamin D3. Everyone knows that you need to take more vitamin D3. And you need to take more vitamin D3, especially during the winter season. So please go to my store, get the vitamin D3. It helps with gene expression, because it's a gene expression cofactor. Vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. You do resistance training, it'll help to build denser bone. Vitamin D3 also helps your cardiovascular system. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. And vitamin D3 helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. Super important for the winter season. And guess what? People are going to get sick in the winter. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3.
In U.S. history, but we are also going to make sure accountability is delivered to its fullest extent. And that happens in the courts of law with our U.S. attorneys and our prosecutors.
And now here is more from...
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. And you don't even need to wrap it. He said it.
And now here is more from Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Today's arrest happened because the Trump administration has made this case a priority. The total lack of movement on this case in our nation's capital undermined the public trust of our enforcement agencies. This cold case languished for 4 years until Director Patel and Deputy Director Bongino came to the FBI.
Now, Cole was charged on counts of transporting an explosive device in interstate commerce, as well as attempted malicious destruction by means of explosive materials. Footage captured by security cameras shows the path of the suspected bomber on the night in question, but his identity was concealed by wearing a hoodie and a face mask, and law enforcement struggled for years to come up with any suspects. Investigators say they used Brian Cole's cell phone data to track his location when the bombs were placed and compared it with the security footage. They also say his credit card records, show him purchasing items consistent with the components used to manufacture the bombs.
It's not clear yet if officials have determined the suspect's motive or if there was any connection between the bomb planting and the events at the Capitol the following day. The case has become a hotbed for conspiracy theories, with people suggesting the suspect didn't act alone, this is before this man was arrested, or that the FBI ignored evidence that would have led to an earlier arrest. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey joined in on the conversation, writing on X, 3 things I'll never believe about the January the 6th pipe bomb story. 1, the bomber was a lone wolf. 2, the FBI was this incompetent for 4 years on a case this consequential. 3, the perpetrators were pro-Trump. Meanwhile, Young Turks founder Yank Uygur says they've arrested the January the 6th pipe bomber. His name is Brian Cole, but we don't know his motive or politics yet. If he's on the left, Trump team will blame everyone on the left, will want to do crackdowns and will call for extreme punishment. If he's on the right, he might pardon. First of all, I always get that Young Turks guy's name wrong, so I apologize in advance. Is it Saint or Gang? Saint. Okay. Well, in any event, obviously a big story here. There were a lot of conspiracy theories around this for a long time. In the end, it seems to have been basically very good, if belated, police work, I think, going through all these records. It doesn't seem to have been a new tip of any description, just going through previous information about what the component parts were for those pipe bombs and who might have bought them, I think.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we don't know what we don't know, what was going on inside that investigation, but the fact that it took so long and then they kind of used regular police work to figure it out will, I think, just add fuel to the fire of conspiracy theories that burn. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I think it was The Blaze, which is kind of a right-wing publication, that was kind of pinning this on a Capitol police officer based on the way they walk and the suspect walk, which apparently now doesn't appear to be the case at all. No word yet on if there's going to be a retraction on that, because it's a pretty serious accusation that was leveled that turns out to look at least not to be true. But you have, like Congressman Massey there kind of adding fuel to the fire still by saying that one of the things we don't know the motives of this person at all, but he's saying he's already not going to believe that he is, a supporter of President Trump. We don't know that right now, so I don't know that he does either.
Right, and I think one of the dangers with this case, or with any case in such a politically polarized environment, is that people just attach theories that are purely, that they're pulling out of thin air, essentially, or pulling out of their own political beliefs, rather than based on the evidence. I think that The Blaze has finally retracted that story, which I think is important, because that was a very, to my mind, thinly based story based on so-called gait analysis, as you suggested, the suggestion that this person was walking in a way similar to the suspect. So, that was a kind of journalistic disaster there. It's obviously worth mentioning that the person who they have arrested will have his day in court, will have the capacity to try to rebut those charges, is entitled to the presumption of innocence, but obviously an apparently major breakthrough in the case.
Also, an interesting question here as to whether or not the blanket pardon that President Trump issued for people that participated in what happened at the Capitol would actually possibly apply to him. People have criticized it for being overly broad. I think it could possibly be unintended consequences if that actually ends up being used by this, suspect's lawyers in the future to say he can't be held accountable.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting issues to this, one of which is that some of the conspiracies on the right were about the idea that the pipe bombs were in some sense an inside job, and I think the conspiracy theory was they were intended to draw Capitol Police and other attention away from the Capitol to, make it easier to breach or something. That, from what we're reading, doesn't seem to be the case at all. The only belief that I have seen ascribed to this guy who has been arrested was some reporting that he had expressed anarchist beliefs of some kind. That doesn't seem at all, what would be the word, consistent with the idea that it's some sort of inside job intended to do something at the Capitol rally.
Yeah, I heard the word extremist, thrown around somewhere regarding to this person. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think there's a danger sometimes in trying to read too much into the beliefs of somebody who's acting in an extreme measure. I don't think they're often consistent. There's often mental illness. So I think we should all be careful. I know there's frequently this rush in the political sphere to assign blame. People want to hope it's not their side and want it to be the other side. And then as soon as it is, they use that as a cudgel to beat down the other side politically. So I think, there should probably be some resistance to that. But just the fact that it took this long and then ended up being regular old police work, listen to some of what the law enforcement officials in the Trump administration said. There was a lot of kind of chest beating over their ability to do this investigation and the lack thereof of the Biden administration. But would be interesting to see what comes out of this the case, and when you start to see discovery and stuff like that, how they actually track this down, because it's quite frankly some interesting police work that went into it. Apparently, it was kind of a re-examination of pre-existing. I mean, that just leads to all kind of questions, because it's such a high-profile case. To think that they would just kind of open it up and hey, what about that again? Maybe run that down. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
5 years, a long time as well. Yeah. Up next, Navy Admiral Frank Bradley denies.
And don't you let? All right, that's the whole pipe bombing case. But I'm pivoting to something that is about the Venezuela drug running boat blowing up incident. Isn't it very surprising that you have senators and representatives going after Pete Hegseth and demonizing the Trump administration and demonizing the military operations that are going on with Venezuela in the context of Trump telling Israel to be peaceful and to de-escalate? I wouldn't be surprised that the Israeli lobbying group is helping to demonize Pete Hegseth. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to digest your proteins, your carbohydrates, your lipids, reduce the stress in your pancreas, allows for proper absorption, less stress in your digestive system. This has bromelain in it, so it reduces clots because it's fibrinolytic, and it has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins, which is super important because there's stuff floating around that you're going to be contracting, and you need to break those up. This is the reason why I said take digestive enzyme complex during the crisis of 2020. Something's going around, and you're going to need it. Be prepared. Olive leaf extract helps to boost up your immune system and your cardiovascular system. It brings down inflammation and helps you to maintain a good lipid profile. Helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. When you do that, you have less plaque buildup. And get the very high quality structural nano silver drops that I have. You can get it in cherry flavor, blueberry, and honey and lemon. Very high quality. Get a few bags for your household. Use discount 5 on any order. You get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. It's important to be prepared, especially for this winter season. You gotta start paying attention to what's going on in China. And you need to start paying attention to high density areas and what's starting to surge. All right, we're going to play Tom Cotton, not Tim Cotton, Tom Cotton. Come on.
Food security is national security. Phosphate powers America's farmers, but global competitors like Russia and China.
New details are emerging about that first alleged drug boat strike that the U.S. conducted in the Caribbean in September.
Navy Admiral Frank Bradley is denying that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave orders to kill all the passengers on board that day. This is in reference to a November Washington Post article which had reported, quote, as 2 men clung to a stricken burning ship targeted by SEAL Team 6 6, the Joint Special Operations Commander followed the Defense Secretary's order to leave no survivors, end quote. On Thursday, the Senate Committee on Intelligence held a classified briefing with both Bradley and the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chair General Dan Kane. Both GOP Senator Tom Cotton and the chair of that committee, and Democratic Congressman Jim Hines affirmed that Bradley's testimony said Hegseth gave no such order. Here's more of what Cotton had to say about the strikes.
The second strike and the third and the fourth strike on September 2nd were entirely lawful and needful, and they were exactly what we expect our military commanders to do.
What exactly did you see in terms of the video of the second strike? Were there survivors?
I saw two survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down the United States, back over, so they could stay in the fight.
Democratic Senator Chris Coons, however, had a much different perspective. Let's take a look.
But I have more policy questions than ever about the framing of the mission, the rules of engagement. I'm not going to get into the details, but there were some things that I was briefed on that are reassuring about process, about intelligence, about the role of the JAGs. But more broadly, what we are asking the men and women of our armed forces, and particularly special forces, to do, I think still lacks clear justification.
Meanwhile, a recent Inspector General report surrounding Signalgate was highly critical of Hegseth. The report found that the Defense Secretary violated department policy by using the Signal app on his own phone to discuss upcoming Houthi strikes, and that he jeopardized troop safety. In a statement, the Defense Department responded, quote, "The Inspector General review is a total exoneration of Secretary Hegseth and provides what we knew all along. No classified information was shared. This matter is resolved and the case is closed," end quote. But
the Signalgate, you know what? That was a stupid move by Hegseth. He should have never have done it. It's not that big of a deal. No, there was no harm. But he needed to pay attention. I think he learned his lesson. In terms of the double tapping on the boat, I see nothing wrong with it. I think killing narco terrorists on a daily basis is a good thing for America.
Take the first story first, shall we? I want to talk about the Washington Post report, because obviously when this all came out, this quote that they had attributed to Secretary Hegseth, to kill them all, leave no quarter, at least what we're hearing, the reports out of the meeting, and it is from both Democrats and Republicans, that was not the instruction that was given. It would be interesting to see what the Washington Post says after that, but if that wasn't true, it's a pretty big mishap by the Post.
Yeah, I mean, I would not like to be the Post reporter or reporters responsible for that story and hear reports, as you say, from Democrats as well as Republicans, that the admiral said that order was not given. And it seems pretty clear. Jim Hines, who we quoted in a different way there about the Democrat, he's the Democrat from Connecticut, he was talking about the fact that there was neither a kill everybody order given, apparently, nor one to give no quarter, which is military parlance amounting to the same thing. There is, obviously, and we can get into this in a second, there's a whole big controversy about these strikes overall, the legal justifications for them, whether they could potentially amount to illegal operations writ large. But you're right to point out that the thing that ignited the current controversy was that Post story saying that Hegseth had given an order to kill everybody, and then there was this strike, there were two survivors clinging to wreckage, and a second strike came to kill them. A second strike did come to kill them, it's just that we're not sure what order preceded that, if any, specifically from Hegseth.
Let's talk about the overarching policy. I'll make the argument that I think the Trump administration and many Republicans probably would. These transnational drug organizations smuggle drugs and people into the U.S. and wreak havoc in Mexico and here in the U.S. as well. The drugs that they sell provide funding that allows them to continue with these operations. Maybe some of the drugs that they're transporting on particular missions aren't necessarily destined for the U.S., but the money that they are able to make off of that drug trade fuels their enterprise, which in turn has this big impact on the U.S., and that is why they're being targeted.
Yeah, look, I know that is the argument on the right. I would push back on most elements of that argument that the administration is making. For a start, the administration very much foregrounds fentanyl in all of this. Now, the vast bulk of fentanyl that comes into the United States is manufactured in Mexico from ingredients, for want of a better term, imported from China. It doesn't come from Venezuela. There's some suggestion that cocaine originating in Colombia sometimes goes through Venezuela, but typically then goes up through the Pacific. The broader issue, Drew, I think, is this idea that the Trump administration is propagating, that the trafficking of drugs amounts to a declaration of war or an attack on the United States. It doesn't seem to me that that is really a sustainable argument. I mean, the actual act of making war, a military, or a terrorist group bombing the United States, yes, those are clearly acts of war. Of course, I'm not saying importing drugs is a great thing or we should let it happen, but there are very well established drug interdiction policies for that.
The drug interdiction policies to prevent the drugs from getting into the United States have failed. And this is the reason why that Trump is doing the right thing. Because if you keep on doing the wrong thing and it's not fixing the problem, it's called insanity. Kill the enemy.
So by blowing people out of the water in international sea.
What about the notion, though, that the same cartels...
These cartels know that they're doing the wrong thing, and there's going to be consequences. What's wrong with that? We have already said that there's a war on drugs. That's going all the way back to the Nixon administration. It's time to get the job done. Oh, the CIA's involved because they want their black money, black ops money. Oh, maybe the Israeli lobbying group is trying to demonize Hegseth. And so they're like talking behind the scenes. Hey, Senator, we need to get Hegseth out of there. Hey, Senator, maybe we need to put some pressure on Trump. Hey, Senator, we need more support, for the Middle East. While Hegseth is like saying, you know what, we need to start paying attention to our hemisphere. We need to start paying attention to what's going on in the Pacific. You think Netanyahu wants us to pivot to Asia? No. I'll tell you, I'm concerned about the Jewish lobbying group. They're out of control.
Are also involved in other nefarious activities that more directly impact the U.S. and that is the connection that's being made, even though, like what you said about fentanyl, which is the biggest problem, precursors from China, manufactured in Mexico. I'm not an expert in cartels, but I don't know if the same cartels that are doing that in Mexico are also involved in Venezuela and Colombia, cocaine and marijuana trade. But if there are connections there to be made, disrupting those networks could be a goal of American military.
I think the disruption of those networks is perfectly valid, but the military strikes aren't the way to do that.
How are you going to do that? They only understand force. Where you're going to you're just going to have a bunch of lawyers that just wait at the shore of Miami and just go, you know what, we're gonna stop you. We're going to prosecute you. We're going to just use law and order. These people don't understand law and order. The only thing that they understand is force. Kill them. Kill them. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with taking over a country that is harming you? Or at least degrade them and put in a government that is more aligned with what we are about? What's wrong with that? Oh, we're going to be going to war with China. Don't you think that we're going to need the precious metals, the rare earth material, and oil supplies to have a war with China?
Oh, you can't do that. That's illegal. That's against, Westphalian international policy.
So what? So what? It's about winning a war. See, this is a stupid liberal. Stupid liberals giving advice, and they don't solve the problem. If it was so easy, why didn't they solve this problem before? Because they were afraid to use force. Force is the only thing that's going to fix this.
Mentioned about, Venezuela versus other cartels. There is, perhaps we don't have time to go fully into this, but there is a whole other element of this, which is the administration's at least openness to some even more direct form of military action in Venezuela.
What's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it.
The desire to depose Nicolas Maduro, all of that is
so what? Many presidents have, especially in our hemisphere. But there's a bigger issue here. We got to make sure that the Chinese and the Russians are not in our hemisphere, period. Secondly, we need to make sure that we have all the advantage to destroy China.
Wrapped up in this question of the drug strikes, because of course President Trump only just pardoned a former president of Honduras who had in fact been convicted of drug trafficking related offenses. So you put the pardon on one hand and the military strikes on the other, and it's hard, I think, to see that to create a plausible case for the administration.
I want to talk about single gate really quick. Senator Cotton made this point when he was talking yesterday. He said we're making a mountain out of a molehill, and that the idea that these communications could have gotten to the hands of somebody that could have acted on them and they could take action against military forces is far-fetched. We're making a big deal out of nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that element of it, I'm not going to pretend to have some great expertise in. I do think the use of these chats and of course their initial exposure by Jeffrey Goldberg in the Atlantic was embarrassing. The granularity of it, I'm just not so expert.
All right. Well, next on Rising, Trump has replaced the architect.
Destroying Venezuela and the drug running, I think, is prudent and not excessive. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the zeolite. Detoxify your body. It'll get rid of heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. You take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water, do that daily. When you do that, you're going to improve your immune system and your endocrine system. Super important. Another great way to detoxify your body is get the deodorants that I have. These are for males and females. It's dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. And again, when you detoxify your body, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. It's very high quality, made from essential oils from the Himalayas. This is the best deodorant that you can buy. There's nothing better than this. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And get the lignans. Lignans helps to bring down inflammation, helps your immune system and your endocrine system, and also soaks up free radicals. If you take this and you work out, you're actually going to recover quicker from your workout. Take this every day, and you're going to slow down the aging process and help your immune system. All right, let's go to CNN. Tom Cotton is talking.
Has launched a new strike on an alleged drug boat, this time in the Pacific, killing 4 people. It comes as we're getting new details about the earlier controversial double strike in the Caribbean that some lawmakers have called a potential war crime. And our reporting contradicts the version of the story defense officials have been telling for months. CNN has learned that Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley, who oversaw that follow-up strike in September, told lawmakers during classified briefings yesterday that the survivors did not radio for backup, as some defense officials have maintained before they were killed in that second strike. Sources say Bradley and other military
so there was anonymous information coming out of the Pentagon telling news reporters to say certain things before they even have the evidence. And then the admiral says, that didn't happen. maybe those anonymous sources should be revealed. Or maybe they never existed.
Debated what to do for 41 minutes. And in the end, we're told Bradley said he ordered the second strike because part of the boat was still afloat with cocaine, and the survivors could have, in theory, made it to safety to continue their operation. Lawmakers who saw the unreleased video of that strike emerged from those briefings, split along party lines. In just a moment, we'll be speaking to one of the top Republicans who was in the room, but our top Democrat saying the video is unambiguous and shows the boat was completely disabled. Listen.
It's very, very. My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy bill in half.
It's very, very clear in this video, which, by the way, should be made public. You had two shipwrecked people on the top of the tiny little bit of the boat that was capsized. The bow. They weren't signaling to anybody. And the idea that these two were going to be able to return to the fight, even if you accept all of the questionable legal premises around.
Another Democrat representative. Ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith.
Mission around these strikes, it's still very hard to imagine how these two were returning to any sort of fight in that condition.
The White House and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth maintains the double tap strike was lawful and necessary. John?
All right, with us now is Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas. He is chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, also sits on Armed Services. You were in the middle of many of these briefings yesterday, Senator, so it's great to get your insight here. The reporting this morning is that these drug runners did not appear to have a radio at the time they were killed, and Admiral Bradley said they were not in a position to call for help at the time. So what threat did they pose?
John, the threat they pose is the threat that the boat that was destroyed yesterday posed and all these other boats pose. They're running drugs in high volumes into the United States that have killed hundreds of Arkansans in recent years and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Americans. It's not exactly what Admiral Bradley said. He said that they didn't have any intercepts of these two drug traffickers trying to radio or call for assistance. That doesn't mean they weren't doing so. It doesn't mean they weren't trying to access communications equipment on the boat, or that they didn't have any of their drug trafficking pals trying to come pick them up because they were just off the waters or just off the coast of Venezuela. And that's a known area for drug cartels.
Did you see any evidence of them trying to use a radio in the video you saw?
Well, I saw lots of evidence of them standing on the boat that had been capsized.
That wasn't my question. Did you see any evidence?
Trying to get it back up, trying to flip it over.
Did you see any evidence of them trying to use a radio?
No, I didn't, John. No, John, but they were clearly not incapacitated. They were not distressed. One guy took his T-shirt off like he was sunbathing. They were trying to get the boat back up and to continue their mission of spreading these drugs all across America.
Did they get
That's what they were doing, and that's why Admiral Bradley ordered the second strike. Well, no, they didn't, because we killed them, and we were right to kill them, and Admiral Bradley was totally justified in the decision he made. A decision, by the way, that was broadcast on multiple secure screens at the Pentagon and Fort Bragg, and that hundreds of people watched in real time with probably dozens of JAG lawyers. So what the Washington Post said last week was a complete lie. They owe an apology to Pete Hegseth, and especially they owe an apology to Admiral Mitch Bradley. He is a highly decorated career Navy SEAL.
Well, the Washington Post reported there was a second strike, which at first the administration seemed to deny. Let me ask you this specific question. Would it be legal for police in Arkansas to kill suspected drug dealers on a boat in an overturned lake?
Well, John. Well, John, let me go back to the premise of your question. The Washington Post reported that Pete Hegseth had given an unlawful order of no quarter or no one left alive or kill them all. Pete Hegseth denied that last week, and it's been denied that there was a second strike. Mitch Bradley and Dan Kane both flatly denied that yesterday as well.
which some of the Democrats who watched that video and got those briefings confirmed. So that's what the Washington Post reported. That is a total and complete lie. I just respectfully disagree with my Democratic friends here. I think the problem they have is not with the second strike, it's with the first strike and every other strike on these boats. They think the entire operation is not well-founded. I just disagree with them. I think with the analogy I would draw is not Arkansas police officers dealing with American citizens. If those boats were loaded with bombs or missiles headed for the United States, I don't think anyone would dispute that we have every right and indeed a duty to intercept them. But those drugs detonate like a bomb all across Arkansas and all across America, killing hundreds of Arkansans and hundreds of thousands of Americans. Our government has a duty to protect our communities from those drugs.
Senator,
That's exactly what we're trying
So
to do.
U.S. attacks on alleged drug boats, 20 plus strikes, 87 killed. All right? Annually, there's approximately 50 to 80,000 individuals that die from drugs coming into the United States. I think Trump is doing a pretty damn good job. It's a shame that it's not 100 drug runners getting killed. It's only 87.
First, answer my question: would it be legal for police in Arkansas to kill suspected drug dealers in an overturned boat in a lake in Arkansas? Just answer that, and then I will address your question on the other thing.
John, the premise of your question is not well founded. Criminals in Arkansas are not foreign nationals who are affiliates of a foreign terrorist designated organization.
The answer is no. It would not be legal.
It's not saying like.
Hang on, Senator. The answer is no. It would not be legal to kill them. Let me ask a follow-up question. If they are terrorists, when did Congress pass the authorized use of force to attack them?
John, the reason why your question is not well founded is like saying, would Barack Obama be okay droning an American citizen when he was president, like he did to Anwar al-Awlaki over in the Middle East? These are totally different categories.
Senator, that's why I asked when Congress passed the authorized use of military force. There was an authorized use of military force against terrorists. I'm not saying what he was legal or not, but that's what they based it on. In this case, when was the authorized use of military force to attack suspected drug dealers off the coast of Venezuela?
John, the president has inherent authority as the commander-in-chief under the Constitution to protect America using our armed forces against a foreign terrorist organization. Congress has passed laws that allows the president to designate foreign terrorist organizations. That's what he's done with these cartels in Venezuela, who are deeply intertwined with the illegitimate Maduro regime. The president is
they call them non-state actors. I will say the latest explanation, excuse me, Senator, the latest explanation from the administration is they are non-state actors in this case. That is important for them to designate. They are non-state actors here. They are not, for purposes of attacking them off the coast of Venezuela, connected to the Maduro regime. They're non-state actors there. And Andrew McCarthy and other conservative writers will say that they don't qualify by the statutory definition of what a terrorist is in U.S. code.
Well, John, I disagree that all of these cartels in Latin America do qualify as foreign terrorists. And frankly, their activities have killed many more Americans than Al-Qaeda or ISIS has killed. And it's a threat that we should take seriously in our own backyard, just as seriously as we take the threat of Al-Qaeda and ISIS around the world. I think most Americans, especially those Arkansans who have lost loved ones to drugs, would agree that we need to take this threat seriously.
Then when will you vote on an authorized use of military force if it's as big of a threat as foreign terrorists?
John, I think the president has every legal authority he needs as the commander-in-chief. If my Democratic colleagues disagree, then they're perfectly entitled to offer an amendment when we start debating the defense spending bill to prohibit him from doing so. Congress has done that throughout our history. But until they get the votes for that, the president has the authority that he needs to protect our country from these drug traffickers.
Quickly, there was an Inspector General report on so-called Signalgate yesterday, which found that Secretary Hexet created a risk to operational security that could have resulted in failed U.S. mission objectives and potential harm to U.S. pilots. That has to do with the attack last March in Yemen. You are chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. You are an incredibly careful and meticulous senator here.
Do you send sensitive information over Signal?
Well, John, I read the Signal report from the IG. I read the classified version as well. I think this is a mountain out of the molehill. By the time much of this conversation was happening on Signal with senior administration officials, they were already calling their foreign counterparts, foreign ministers, defense ministers, national security advisors around the world. They were doing that on unsecure lines. I don't see the risk here. I understand the administration needs the ability to coordinate action outside of secure information facilities. And I simply think it's a mountain out of the molehill, John.
Do you use Signal to transmit sensitive information like this?
John, I think I'll refrain from telling the bad guys which apps or communication devices I use.
All right. Okay. But Senator, you do know that the Inspector General did find that sensitive information was transmitted that could put troops at risk, correct?
No, I read the report, John. I just disagree with some of his findings, and I think it blows it all out of proportion. And frankly, Inspector General reports across the government often do just that.
All right, Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support this channel so we can cover the stupid news that's out there. You can see that CNN is supporting Venezuela. Wonder why? Oh, this is the CIA. Please go to my store and get the turmeric. Turmeric will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. And when you bring down inflammation regularly, your neurons will be in a better state because you're reducing the stress on the neuron so it can maintain its myelin sheath. Ashwagandha root controls your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. When you do that, you're helping your cardiovascular health and your immune system. And Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost focuses on a multitude of areas of your body. Helps with brain function, helps with musculature, helps with your cardiovascular system, boosts up your energy, and revs up your metabolism. This is a very comprehensive supplement. You should be taking this every day. This is a month's supply. It's going to do wonders. You're going to notice the effects within 72 hours. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to have a lot of more energy. And it's going to be a steady burn of energy. It's no spiking. It's a steady burn of energy. You're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to have better brain function. Your memory will improve. And guess what? Boomer Boost will slow down the aging process. Take it every day. It's a great supplement. It stacks well with C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, the cleanser, Max 35, probiotics, and my multivitamin. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work I do. And follow my advice, and you're going to slow down the aging process, and your body is going to perform better. You're going to have a better immune system, a better endocrine system, and your other organ systems are going to be much better off. You do that regularly, there will be a compound effect. So when you're in your geriatric years, you're going to be way better off. You won't be on pharmacopoeia. Your medical costs most likely will be down. But if you don't be surprised that when you get older, your body starts falling apart. All right. Let's listen to Live Now. This was posted 29 minutes ago.
Of U.S. military strikes on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean back in September reportedly shows two shirtless, unarmed survivors hanging onto a boat, working for about an hour to flip it back over before they're then struck and killed. Reuters reporting this morning on the contents of the video described by sources to the publication, saying that it shows smoke clearing and two men who had somehow lived through the blast clinging to part of that vessel in an attempt to survive. The Navy Admiral commanding strikes told lawmakers on Thursday that there was no, quote, kill them all order from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who of course is also known as the Secretary of War. However, some Democrats who watched video of the strike say they're left with questions after two survivors were killed. And of course, I do want to mention that that video has not been made public yet. However, President Trump says he is open to doing that. Now, Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley appeared for a series of closed-door classified briefings at the Capitol as lawmakers conduct an investigation after a report that he ordered the follow-up attack that killed the survivors to comply with Hegseth's demands. A lot to this here, so I do want to bring in retired U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Bob Moret, professor of practice at Syracuse University. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today and help discuss this further.
Thanks, Josh. Good to be back with you again.
All right, team, listen up. There's a national blood shortage. Who's got donation ideas? Chance of the President Suite? Classy. Dude, that's so much cheese. Save lives and help win your school $1 million.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Right now, Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the...
Thanks, Josh. Good to be back with you again.
And first off, I did want to start by asking you kind of an overall question here. As you take a look at the situation that played out there, what is the role of that admiral in deciding exactly what to do here? And is he essentially supposed to do whatever Hegseth wants him to do?
Yeah, Josh, great question. It has to do with the delegated authority that any Secretary of Defense has to do for any operational commander at different levels. During the time that Admiral Bradley was doing that, he was actually in his previous job as the commander of the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, before he became the overall four-star commander of SOCOM, which he is today. And authority was delegated down to him, which is not unusual for operations consistent with the rules of engagement, which is a thing we'll probably get back to. And that kind of operational decision making goes all the way down to infantrymen, captains of ships, and people in Air Force cockpits. So it's not unusual when you would delegate that authority down to some other individual.
And I was going to say, regardless of who actually makes the call, does the decision ultimately kind of fall on Hegseth as the defense secretary, secretary of war, whatever you want to call him, in that position?
Yeah, Josh, we call it the National Command Authority, which is the President and the Secretary of Defense, are ultimately responsible by any activity by the U.S. Armed Forces. Now, having said that, every President, every Secretary of Defense delegates the authority for lethal operations down to pretty low levels, down to, privates and infantrymen, and as I said, different kinds of people. So the fact that this was delegated down to a subordinate level, which was actually fairly senior, Admiral Bradley was a three-star at the time the September 2nd activity took place, is not unusual at all. Those are the kind of things that happen all the time.
And of course, we're looking at some of the video there that has been unclassified. We also know that President Trump has said that other video that shows that second strike could be unclassified at some point. Now, what are the primary objectives, would you say, of Operation Southern Spear beyond the strike that everyone kind of has been talking about there in early September?
Yeah, a great question, Josh. I think Operation Southern Spear, if you want to look at it, can be divided into two different mission sets. One is the counter-narcotics operations, or narco-terrorism, as it's sometimes articulated, but it's trying to stem the flow of narcotics into the United States because of the terrible impact that it has in our own country. And then the second one is the overall what we're going to do about Venezuela, which is a big unknown, whatever kind of operations related to the Southern Spear that may have to do with changing circumstances in Venezuela, which is a separate mission set, calling for a very different force package.
And kind of looking into this a little bit deeper, how does everyone work together, the joint forces there, air, sea, land, that are integrated for a mission like this? But also on that same note, what are maybe some of the challenges that exist when you're trying to coordinate all of that?
Yeah, the answer to what we call command relations, Josh, are fairly straightforward. We have what are called geographic commanders. In this case, U.S. Southern Command, which is based in Florida. They are the supported operational commander for Operation Southern Spear, and they've also already created a subordinate joint task force, which was originally put together around the 2 Marine Expeditionary Force headquarters. But they have air, ground, and sea forces, which are put together for what are called functional component commanders in any kind of command structure you have to conduct air, sea, and land operations, both for the counter-narcotics effort and contingency planning related to Venezuela or any other actions that the Southern Command Geographic Commander, who was Admiral Hosley still, would want to conduct. Should just mention one other thing in closing relative to that. Admiral Hosley is going to step down a week from today. They're going to have to change the command for U.S. Southern Command down there in Florida. Lieutenant General Evan Pettis, the deputy commander, will be taking his place next Friday.
What is it that you would say lawmakers were looking to hear from the Admiral as he did appear for those closed-door meetings? Now, again, cameras were not allowed inside. We don't have a lot of information except what we heard from lawmakers after. But what did it appear that the Admiral, that lawmakers were hoping to hear from him?
Yeah, well, we'll start by saying, Josh, this is good oversight. I mean, for both the Senate and House Armed Services Committees, two bipartisan committees looking into high-interest activity by the Defense Department and military units is good governance. We're glad to see that happen, certainly. The other thing I would say is that they were probably focused on what happened on September 2nd, but I would also hope and have some reason to believe they also step back and look at the big picture in terms of the overall goals of these operations, what the rules of engagement look like, how they pertain to overall strategy, what it is we're trying to do, beyond just isolated incidents that are fairly small in scale relative to our operations, to what's being called Operation Southern Spear.
Can you tell me about HEGSET plans here that are coming up? You and I were discussing this kind of during the commercial break, but kind of break that down for me and the significance overall.
Yeah, a couple of fairly significant developments just in the last, yesterday. The administration released their new national security strategy, which is a very, very important document. The NSS, as we call it, has a pretty heavy focus on the Western Hemisphere to include, with respect to our current conversation, counter-narcotics operations and so forth, but also security of the Western Hemisphere. And also, Secretary HEGSET will be in California. You may be out there already for what's called the Reagan National Defense Forum, which is an important annual event. He will be at least talking about our new national defense strategy, and that may be rolled out in the days ahead as well. So those are two very significant guidance documents you expect from any administration, and they're forthcoming for this one just here these days.
All right, Bob Moret, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and helping to break it down. Obviously, a story that's not going anywhere anytime soon, so I'm sure we'll have you back. Anything else you want to add? Anything we missed here before I let you go?
Yeah, just kind of as we discussed, Josh, we'd encourage people to step back and keep an eye on the big picture. I know there's been a tremendous focus on what happened on September 2nd. Rules of engagement are tough to execute, and I'm sympathetic to people that have to make those split-second decisions in any kind of contingency. But, the broader issues of our strategy is relative to Operation Southern Spear and our operations in Central and Latin America are the big picture that I hope we'll focus on.
All right, Bob, thank you again for taking the time to join us.
All righty. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60, you can get it in extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or MCT coconut oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. C60 is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. It's a very potent antioxidant. It's part of my anti-aging protocol. Take a teaspoon a day every day. And by doing this, your immune system, your endocrine system, your cardiovascular system, even brain function will improve. Why? By soaking up free radicals, you're reducing stress on the cell in your tissues, bringing down inflammation. You're soaking up free radicals. You're helping the health of your mitochondria. Your ATP will go up. You'll have more energy. Your cells will perform better. Your tissues will perform better. And when you do that, that immune system, the endocrine system, even the neurons will perform better. So please take the C60 every day, teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout. You'll recover quicker because when you're working out, you're generating free radicals. You want to soak those up. And you'll notice that when you do that type of protocol before your workout, you'll recover quicker. So take C60 every day. In addition, it helps the basal layer of your skin. So over time, your skin cells will improve because the basal layer is where the new skin cells are generated. So if you improve that basal layer by taking C60 and the resveratrol, they stack really well, you're actually improving your skin. If you do this for 1 year, you will have a noticeable, visible difference where you look younger compared to your before picture. So if you do this for 1 year, every day, you will look younger. In addition, to get that max benefits, do this holistic approach. Exercise, proper sleep, stay away from processed foods, drink filtered water, mindfulness or spirituality, learning new things, stacking the supplements. You're going to get all these added benefits. C60 is very powerful. It's a great supplement. I've been taking this since 2016. You will start noticing the effects of this if you're just starting within about 2 months. But like I said, if you take it every day for 1 year, you will look younger. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And also, get the collagen. Collagen is dual purpose. It's going to help with your skin, your nails, your hair. Also, your musculature, your bone density, your cartilage, and joint health. This is a month supply. Take it every day. This is a very high quality collagen. There's a lot of collagen out there. Most of it's garbage. This is very high quality. Everything I sell on my store is extremely high quality, and I take regularly. So please go to my store. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Thank you for listening. That's the end of my broadcast. Have a nice day.